Like, that's the way it works, right? That as parents, we impact in good ways and bad ways our children, right? And it's still really, really hard.
My name is Figs O'Sullivan.
And I'm Teale O'Sullivan.
We're emotionally focused couples therapists, and we're a couple.
In an act of sheer bravery
or foolishness,
we're sharing our own couples therapy sessions with the world.
Watch or listen to us fight,
cry,
laugh,
and repair.
Then grow in your relationships along with us through the insight we share as couples therapists.
There's a little kid inside of each of us just reaching out for love and connection.
Let's begin to reach back out to each other.
Welcome home.
This is Come Here to Me. Hey, welcome back to Come Here to Me with Figs.
And Teale. I forgot who I was for a minute.
You're like, well, what am I supposed to say?
Who am I?
Exactly. But, actually, we just hit record really quickly because I thought, we're already having this, I thought, really good conversation. Why don't we share it?
Yeah.
You want to just say what you were saying about...
Sure. So, Figs is such an important mentor for me.
That's not what I meant, that you were going to compliment me. That's why I said, quick, record it.
Oh, okay. Well,
You're about to say something nice about
okay,
it,
I'm not. I'll talk about myself. But we were talking about making fun of ourselves in our sessions with our clients. And I was like, oh yeah, let me give you an example of when I thought I did this the other day. And here I am, been a couples therapist for a solid 6 years. Worked with hundreds.
It's more than 6 years.
Well, I've been a therapist for longer, but specifically in just with couples.
Just couples, yeah. Almost 90% couples, yeah.
And doing, a lot of hours per week. So it's been a lot. But I was like, oh yeah, let me give you this example. Because I talk about our relationship just a little bit with my clients. And this example of me making fun of myself was actually me putting Figs down.
Exactly.
And he was so good about it. He's like, oh yeah, you're kind of making fun of me. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just trying to counter shame people that they're not so bad.
Exactly.
You're this bad.
Yeah. You're counter shaming and go, look, I have a crap spouse.
That's what I've been doing. Too. And I've been thinking, gosh, I'm so, transparent. I'm doing such good transparency about this. And he's like,
well, one of the things I do, and I try and guide the therapists on our team to be able to do the same, is it's very hard to reflect somebody's reactive self, the parts of them that come out in relationship that make things worse, and to make sure that someone just doesn't feel criticized or that they're seen negatively. And because if someone feels really criticized, they're not going to be able to take in the reflection, right? They're not going to be able to take in this feedback you're giving them. So something that I do is, because it's so easy for me, is whenever someone tells me look, I was really upset and I yelled at my partner, I was really upset. And so I left the house and didn't talk to them for 4 hours. Oh, I was really upset. So I went to bed and pulled the covers off my head, whatever it is. Honestly, there aren't too many things someone could tell me that I'm not oh yeah. Oh, have I done that and then some?
And so it not only helps your clients, it helps our therapists on our team. We have these amazing therapists that work with us, and it helps me so much. Every time I'm feeling crap, sometimes I just, couples therapy, there's never a dull moment.
No, there's lots of opportunities to feel like you're a failure.
Exactly. And you sometimes just need pepping up. But Figs has been there those 6 couples therapist years with me, just saying, oh, Teale, but here's when I was crap. And it helps me so much just feel I'm actually good. And okay, Figs has had a hard experience of this, but I was just telling Figs because he kind of was like, oh, so you're making fun of me. And I was like, oh my God. The reason why he wanted to turn the video on is because I said, honey, I just had my first successful moment of truly making fun of myself. And I did it twice. Yeah. And it was I'm pretty funny. Figs is really funny, but I'm pretty funny.
Thank you.
And I made this couple laugh so hard. It was this moment. And it's I could tell they were very disarmed and I felt good about it. It was just So I was kind of bragging to you about how I made fun of myself, and you were like so proud of me. I love that. That's like we give each other props.
Well, I love that. I just appreciate, I mean, obviously you giving me credit is always nice, you know, for helping you. And I don't think people fully grasp just how hard it is to truly see the parts of yourself that, you know, you mightn't be proud of, and then really own them and tell them to someone else. But it's such a wonderful gift, because like what you're doing is you're helping them make it a little easier to shine their own light on, you know, there are stuff I do in relationship that are really hard, and I don't just have to beat myself up about it, nor do I have to deny it or dilute it.
Right.
Because one of the things I notice often is sometimes I'm trying to help people to really see, look, you really did did get really critical of your partner, and they will think they're actually helping themselves by going, well, you know, I wasn't actually being critical, Figs. I just had some questions I needed answers to. And I'm like, look, you're actually acting against your own interest right now. It would actually serve you better to see I was critical, you are right. Now, interestingly, because that'll actually help their partner go, oh my God, thank God they can see themselves.
Can I give you an example of this? Yeah. Like, this is such an important, but I'm also like laughing because earlier session, yes, I work on the weekends. I told a client, I said, so it's basically like you kicking someone in the dick and saying, oh, what? Well, they just needed a little kick in the dick.
Exactly.
I thought it was like really inappropriate, but
very inappropriate.
You know, I felt
sorry for anybody who are sensitive to hearing about other human beings being kicked in the dick. Because some people,
I'm embarrassed that you shared that.
Well, look, I'd rather be kicked in the dick than the balls, though. I have to be honest.
Well, I should have said that now.
Yeah, kicked in the testicles is more painful.
Okay.
But good to know that that's how you're talking to your clients.
Yeah.
That's great.
Just to know what's happening in this room.
No, it's absolutely good. Yeah, look, or was it, Jesus, the expression that a client said, like this is a long time ago, that I had never heard before that really shocked me. Like it was really shocking. They said their partner was trying to explain how they're not actually being mean. And this particular client, their partner said, don't piss on my head and then tell me it's raining. I was like, oh, ouch. I was like, I didn't even know. I was like, oh, I think she got you there. Ow. Like, that was a good comeback. There was not much, I had to like applaud. No, actually, I was horrified. I thought it was pretty harsh in the moment. But it was like, ooh, but I like that. Where, you know, let's say like, you know, I was blaming you, criticizing, you're saying like, Figs, why are you being mean? I'm like, oh, me? What?
Exactly.
Like that's actually worse than like owning, yeah, I'm in my reactive place and I cannot stop myself being Mr. Blamey Pants right now. Like that's actually better than saying, oh, I'm not being mean.
This is one of the things, and listen, I know it's hard for Figs to take in, you know, validation, but this is one of the reasons why you are a brilliant couples therapist. Stop it. Let me finish my thought, because don't you worry, in the session coming up, I'm not too nice. Okay. So this is just warming you up.
Exactly.
Darling.
Yeah, you're telling me the other side too. But no, I appreciate you being nice to me.
Well, let me get to it. Is that this idea of using humor? Like here I am for 6 years helping other people, and believe me, I'm a good couples therapist. I think I am. Whatever.
No, you're amazing.
I'm not saying I'm crap. I'm just saying, oh my gosh, doing all this work, thinking I am vulnerable, and a lot of times I cry with people, I laugh with people. But here I am thinking I'm like doing some vulnerable reframe, and I'm talking about you.
Right.
And I'm not talking about me. It just helps
You're
me.
You're talking about the way.
Well, look at what my husband did, you know, or something like that. And it's just like, it's so simple and it's so right here. And it just helps me claim it with humor. Yeah, and that's one of the brilliant things, is that this way you make fun of yourself, you throw yourself under the bus. And I started today, and boy, it felt good, and I got some good laughs. Yeah.
That was a high five, in case you're wondering, the slapping.
Slapping something.
No, okay. I knew that. I knew as soon as I said slapping that you would take it in a direction that is not appropriate for our podcast. But yeah, let's talk about our session. That was just the conversation we're having. So I thought like, shit, we should share some of what we're actually talking about before we hit the record button.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about couples counseling all day long. What a wonderful life we have, right? But so come here, come here, see, shorthand again for come here to me. Now I'm going to get all conscious about saying it all the time. In this therapy session that we just had 2 days ago, we talked about parenting.
We did talk about parenting. I wonder if you'd be open to sharing. Kind of after that, you were sort of thinking like, oh, okay, another one about how Figs is this bad guy.
Yeah, well, look, at the start of the session, you know, when you told me, look, I have a list of different things that we could talk about, I'm like, oh, Jesus, right? This is great. Like, what I hear when you say the list, these are a list of grievances and a list of further evidence to be given to our therapist, you know, about what a shit partner and spouse I have.
Right.
But there was another part of me that was relieved that you had something to talk about, just because I didn't really have anything that was really burning.
I always do, so no worries.
That's good.
Never feel bad about that.
Exactly.
But people, here, little side note for our audience, people that process like me in relationship, we can often be list people.
List of things that are wrong.
List of things that need to be resolved.
Or it could get better.
And I have seen clients come in with lists, and it's always the person who processes around those lines of the relentless lover, the pursuer.
Right. The one that can feel abandoned and not considered more than their partner typically.
Yeah, exactly. So oftentimes we can process like that, and that scares the crap out of our partners. I was in a good place, and I just wanted to be really conscious about how I brought this stuff up, because I don't want Figs to collapse into shame and being pissed off. I want to have like a collaborative conversation. So what I thought was interesting is that after the session ended, like the taste in your mouth was kind of like, okay, that was good. And it's a little bit like another thing where Figs has this problem. And I kind of felt like bad, like, oh gosh,
well, it's about where it starts. The first thing I was left with, oh my God, another session we talked about how I'm the one who's difficult. And because of the way I'm difficult or I do things wrong, it makes everything worse for everybody else.
Right.
That was the story I was in.
Yeah.
That, again, this is my perception. I'm not saying it's true, but the perception I was living with was, oh my God, we did another session that was predominantly about the way I'm crap and I make things difficult for everybody.
Yeah, that's what he was sort of initially thinking. And of course, that felt really bad to me. And I saw it really differently. But I did see what he was saying. And so I kind of felt, empathic. I was really struck by the moments in the session where I was sort of owning something that felt really bad and I felt really ashamed of. So, and we'll get into that with the clip. But I think one of the really important things to share as well is that this was a successful way of me bringing things up. Because so often in parenting struggles that Figs and I have, it's so messy. And we don't really go back that often to it, or Figs kind of has to capitulate to me because I'm strong. But this wasn't about you being strong-willed and strong-smelling.
Jesus.
It's really humid today. I do have like my rose deodorant, but TMI.
You do actually so often have way too much like essential oil. You're like a little too hippie, right? Like you constantly like lavender, rose. What did you go? Rose such and such.
I don't know what you're talking about, and I actually don't do essential.
You also don't know how to turn your watch off.
Let
me put your watch on silent.
A technological idiot. Anyway.
I'm glad you said that, not me. If I said that now, we would have to change this introduction to a session into a session.
Processing session.
Right.
But hey, I felt very different. And what was so helpful was watching it back. And what Figs and I were really struck by was how traumatizing it was for us to talk about parenting, and actually a part that included our amazing 6-year-old daughter, Grace. And with that said, we're going to talk about some challenges that Figs and I have each in parenting, setting boundaries, sticking to consequences, planning on the front end, how we navigate some conflict between our daughter and son together, and how he and I navigate conflict, some parenting differences, some parenting similarities. We are going to talk a little bit more specifically about our daughter and a part of her her mental health that was affected in relation to COVID.
Yeah, the pandemic and lockdown.
Yeah. And I actually have saved this as a surprise for Figs, because he said, well, did you get to talk to Grace? Because we wanted to see how she felt about us sharing parts of our...
Grace is 6.
Grace is 6, our therapy session that included information about her, kind of vulnerable information about her. And you know what she told me?
What she said?
She said, Mom, if it would help other kids that had as much worry as me and help other moms and dads or other parents, I would be happy if you shared it with other people.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It just blew me away. I was just like, oh, Grace, thank you.
Yeah.
Because this is, it's just private, but it's to help other kids and other families who had a situation like we had, and how to work with it, and then just how to work as parents in general. And Figs and I don't have it figured out, as you'll hear, but we've got some ideas.
Thanks, Teale. I'm hoping that us sharing about our challenges with parenting and just being really honest and both what's difficult for us, but also how we can feel bad about ourselves inside, and people getting to see us talk about the challenges we had with finding out, our daughter had this acute onset OCD due to the pandemic. It was really hard, and it's a hard thing to talk about. And so I'm just hoping that us sharing with you might make it a little easier for you to talk to your partner or spouse and acknowledge to yourself and each other that, look, that was really, really hard. Even if it's ongoing or past tense, that even if we're surviving and we're doing all the right things, it doesn't mean we shouldn't slow down and really feel, wow, this is really hard. And just be with each other and how hard it is.
Absolutely. I mean, it really makes me feel the privilege of we've got very able-bodied kids, and, I'm just thinking about all the families out there with more complicated neurodiverse issues and physical complications and psychological complications, right? We just dipped into this world, and it blew us away. We were not really expecting it. And as you'll see, it touched really deep places of shame for both Figs and I that this happened. And you'll get to see a little bit more about what that was like for us. But we navigated this session, I think, in a really potentially helpful way for other people.
Yeah, it was very helpful for us. So it was really a bonding experience for us. It's something that I thought it was just going to be a Figs is terrible session. But so look, let's watch it. And again, don't ever hesitate to email us or write to us, comment, and whatever.
Yeah, maybe you've had experiences similar or different, or have a question about
we want to hear
this.
From you.
Yeah, we're beginners and learners in a lot of these things. So
exactly.
Yeah,
we are, especially with the parenting thing. Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's play it.
Rock me, daddy.
Rock me, daddy. Play the tape.
So I think it will just help me because as kind of a pursuer, I can have a list of things that feel,
this is
like disconnecting things that I want to work on.
Great.
And I want you to work on. I want us to work on together. And so I'm just going to say it so I don't have to hold that list by myself. I'm not going to say a whole list. I'm just going to say a couple things.
Okay. Go on.
Do you not want me to do that?
No, I do. But part of me is happy that you have a list of things to work on. And part of me is obviously dreading it. Both things are true. Because when you say I have a list, I hear you have a list of complaints or evidence of my badness. But this is fine. That's all. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your flow any further.
Yeah, well, just remember it's always a cycle. I don't see myself as an angel in the relationship. Right now, I'm not. But sometimes I do.
I know.
Okay. So things that I'm excited for us to talk about as a group are sex and intimacy.
Oh, come on. You can't put that one straight out.
Well, I'm not saying we need to talk about that one today. I'm just saying let's hold it all together.
Exactly.
The second one is, and it's a little bit more up for me right now, is parenting and maybe parenting differences between Figs and I. And I personally feel like I'm coming out of what has been a really hard period with my son, between myself and him. And, I thought we might talk a little bit about that and a little bit about what can happen between Figs and our daughter, actually. or whatever you want to talk about. I'm happy to start and talk kind of about where and like how this, it's interesting because we did, it was kind of cute. Like we did a couple sessions with this parenting coach at the beginning of coronavirus. And she was like, do you guys need couples therapy or do you need to do this? No, but we kind of discovered that because we were like, we realized something. We had a really big insight about some of the struggles that come up for us around parenting and around kind of what can look like maybe on the outside, like one of us siding more with one of our children and the other one siding more with the other one.
Yeah, that's an issue. That's an issue for us.
That's an issue for us. So, well, it sounds like maybe we want to talk about that.
Sure. We can talk about parenting.
Yeah, let's talk about parenting.
Okay, go.
The last thing you said about parenting was taking sides. Is that where the juice is?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good entry point.
Yeah, maybe we'll break it. I'll break it down for you, like just what can happen. And I think that there's a lot of, anyway, we'll wrap. Hopefully, we'll do a little bit more of a 360 degree. It's. Right. I think it's different. I actually think we've grown a lot since we kind of identified this as a negative cycle, or a little bit.
No, I would. It's interesting you bring it up now. I feel a little bit of backsliding into the sides thing this week for me.
Yeah.
So maybe you're not, but I feel a little triggered back into that.
But it was so funny. It was so funny because last night. So yesterday morning. So our son does.
You say taking sides, like let's be like you. So we've gotten in trouble where I feel like you think I'm unfair on Grace, our oldest daughter, and I feel you could be unfair on Kian,
exactly,
our son.
Yeah. So yeah, we both feel like.
I'm too harsh on Grace, and I can think Kian gets blamed for everything.
Yeah, exactly. And that I can be like, wow, you're really harsh on Grace. And then I can be a little bit more like, lovey-dovey with her. And then I feel like because Figs is a little easier on Kian, I can be a little harder on him. I think there's just a weird dynamic that's formed, and part of listen, I have so much. I'm floored by how much I have to learn as a parent, and I don't have it figured out. And listen, if people looked at my parenting from the outside, they'd be like, "This is a great parent." Like my mom tells me that. People tell me that. They give me positive feedback. I do think I have strengths, but I still threaten, bribe. I still guilt.
Yeah, threaten like you won't get to watch TV.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to read a book tonight unless you get yourself. And there's nothing like.
Yeah.
We don't use corporal punishment. We don't put our kids in timeout.
We did have a thinking chair. But that backfired because he took it as a punishment. I have the punishment chair. It wasn't supposed to be a punishment chair.
Well, I actually think that it did what we needed it to do at that time, and I think he grew. I think he grew as a result of it. Anyway, the point is that we are both learning a lot as parents.
Right.
I had some really negative judgments of you this week, just in how you were interacting with our daughter. A couple days in particular, and I get into just a very critical place, and I get really worried, and I'm kind of in that story of Figs and Grace, and get worried, about the future and their relationship, and I'm sure I know that you've been worried about how I can interact with Kian, and and I think that you had legitimate concern. I don't think it's been good between him and I think we're kind of coming out of that. So anyway, I'm scared to say I had negative judgment of you because I don't want you to feel bad. I just want to be able to talk about it, in a way, in a more open way.
I think it's.
Do you want to say what you saw as an example and what you felt when you saw it?
Maybe why don't you lead us in that? I feel like I've kind of said enough and don't want to shame you. I want you to maybe say, how do you feel about how you interacted with Grace?
Right. Well, yeah, I think what you're kind of referring to is I can get frustrated with Grace in a couple of different ways. You know, like I find her complaining and being unhappy and asking for stuff, I find her to be relentless at times, that I can be really impatient and mad at her, critical of her in moments. Like, you know, and I get it, like in a moment like this, that somehow I don't think my expectations of her in those moments align with what is a fair expectation to have of her. But for some reason, I get upset or hurt when I think she should be able to respond to a moment differently than she's doing. I have a much greater expectation of her than I do of Kian, like our 3-year-old. And so I can be mad at her, critical of her, or disappointed, or, you know, she knows how to say, oh, sorry. But she knows how to say the words, but it's like, you know, she's just saying the words.
She's very, 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 very persistent.
Yeah.
It'll be a strength, as it is a strength. It will be a strength.
Like her mother.
Yeah.
You're very persistent.
I am. Thank you. Can we work on you right now?
No, but look, well, here's something that happened yesterday.
She pisses me off. What I'm saying is, like, I have moments where I lose my shit at Grace too.
Well, maybe it would be easier to describe yesterday, because I feel bad about the way I talked to her. Like, I picked her up from school, and from the moment I picked her up from school, she's like, can I go to Ellie's house? Text Ellie's mom. And, like, it just, like...
She has a new
friend.
It
hurts that, like, she doesn't, there's no time that she's like, I'm happy to see you. It's just like, I want to go to Ellie's house. And then we get home, and then it's like, she's like, I don't know, were you home yet? Or like, then she's doing it to you. She's asking you.
She started asking me. And then
she's asking me again. And at some point, and then you had said, look, it's up to you and Figs, and I don't know what to do. And so I was feeling powerless inside, and she's asking me. And at some point I said, Jesus, do not ask me anymore. You're not going to Ellie's. Stop asking me. I've had enough of you complaining. Stop trying to get away from us. And then I said it to her frustrated like that. And look, I don't think I should have talked to her like that.
Well, I mean, I think particularly the last sentence could have been shaming for her.
Well, absolutely. I don't think I should have talked to her like that. And no, yeah, it's terrible. Like, I wish I was, again, better able to not feel overwhelmed when she's asking me the same thing over and over again, right? I wish, I
wonder if there was a trigger.
Well, one of the things that happens with... Look,
can I just say something?
Go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what I think is you and I need to do work on the front end so that we're doing kind of proactive parenting instead of reactive parenting.
Exactly, right.
I deferred it to you because I literally was super overwhelmed. I was like, should you go to Ellie's house? I don't know. I had a session. Like, is it
right?
But she doesn't go into this person's house. They go play outside. It's a new friend, and it's really exciting for Grace to have a new friend. She's in a new place. The girl happens to be in her class. They're very different from us. Grace has been introduced to Barbies, which is something that we really resisted. So it's all sorts of like, and the little girl is fabulous and can challenge Grace in ways that we find a little hard. So there's just a lot of mixed feelings.
Exactly.
And so
I like that. I like the front end idea. I think that you guys are going to get on the same page.
That's actually what I was going to say. I actually think going back to the earliest days of our parenting issues, like, it's not, to me, one of the way I interpret, like, kind of makes sense of why I was less resourced in that moment is sometimes, like, I think back to when Grace was 2 and you would say, go get Grace dressed And then Grace does not want to get dressed. And I would feel like you gave me an impossible task. Like, you know, and she really doesn't want me to dress her. I remember it was always this like, look, we have to leave in 5 minutes and Grace has to be dressed, right? And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I would literally be like, I'm not, that is like, and if I don't do it, you're going to be upset. I always felt like there was this thing I was asked to do that I'm not capable of doing.
Yeah.
And so I'm left now, I'm either going to force Grace, I'm going to like literally have to like hold her down and put socks on as she's fighting me, or turn, like, it just feels like an impossible situation. And so yesterday, so there isn't an immediate on the front end relational piece between you and I didn't know what to do, and I was overwhelmed with her asking me over and over again. And then I had asked her to ask you, and then you sent her back to me.
Which we don't do very often.
Yeah, but it was a bad setup on the front end.
We rarely are like, go ask your, you know, it's like sometimes, like when I'm in session, Figs is in charge. If she asks me something, I do say, ask your dad. He's the one in charge. Like, I'm not going to make a rule for their time when I'm not available. So we do that, and I think it's functional. But I think yesterday it was not quite functional, and I was a little out of it. Like, I was like, I just didn't know what to do. But listen, I'm just grateful that we're having this conversation. I feel really grateful for it, and you're being very good as we talk about.
Oh, look, I feel really bad. There's no defense. There's no excuse for getting that frustrated with Grace all of a sudden. For whatever reason, I do feel like sometimes there are things I'm asked to do that I find it hard to see how it's going to be possible. And that's where, like, if I feel powerless, again, I'm not saying, like, obviously I don't think this is good, but I'm more likely to have a big reaction on the outside, you know, just because I don't know how to handle. It's literally, my brain is frying. Like, I literally don't know how to do this. Like, doing this is probably going to be worse than not doing it, but not doing it is not okay. Like, sitting in the middle of that, I kind of freaking melt. I kind of have a little bit of a fit. Like, you know, when our daughter was 2, she wouldn't wear shoes. And I remember in the middle of winter in San Francisco, walking her down the street with bare feet, right? And this woman saying under her breath, this woman walked by and went, shoes, to me, you know? Like, you know, isn't this obvious? Yeah.
It's like, thanks. Oh.
Exactly. Hey, I'm like, hey, come here, you put them on her, because I can't do it. Like, but that's like, I would be in these, look, if I walk her out without shoes, I'm in trouble. If I don't walk her to where we need to go, I'm in trouble. And that's a moment where I'm likely to, I'd like be really frustrated. And look, I feel terrible. I feel terrible that it impacts my daughter negatively. Look, yesterday Grace is like, Daddy, you take some time to relax, right? Like, even the fact that she says stuff like that, I feel really terrible, right? Like, that shouldn't be something in an ideal world that she has to be aware of Daddy's mood, right?
Well, the two things that I think we've talked about that would help you is the front end stuff.
Exactly.
And the other thing that will help is the triggers, you know.
Right. When you say the triggers, what do you mean? I understand the front end stuff between Teale and I.
Front end stuff is you and
exactly.
me, but
and
also us communicating with Grace. Exactly. Hey, Grace, here's how much audiobooks you can listen to a day. Hey, Grace, here are the days that you can hang out with Ellie.
Right. And no, that all makes sense, the front end. But what's the trigger stuff?
Oh.
Like, what do you mean with the triggers?
That was like from the last session. Like,
oh, exactly.
What happened with you and the neighbor and the dog? And
no, that makes sense. But when you say the triggers, do you, like, help me in there? Like, you know, so the front end stuff seems like, oh, yeah, we could work on the front end to be better prepared so I'm not feeling powerless in a moment so that I'm reactive. Right. But, you know, that all makes sense that we could do as much as possible to limit those things. But the trigger part, like, triggers are going to come up. I mean, look, I can work out, I can eat better, sleep well, you know.
Well, a trigger would be, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is like, of Grace not wanting to spend time with us, of her.
No, I understand. But when you say, but maybe, you know, usually I'm not that focused on the actionable part of something. But when you say there are two things we can do. One is planning on the front end, and then the second is the trigger part.
What I mean is, like Teale started to say, for example, what makes me so reactive when she says, I don't want to go home, I want to go to my friend's house? Or what happens to me when I get overwhelmed?
Right.
and feel like I don't have an answer for whether she should go to the friend's house or go home.
You mean just get to know what's really happening inside?
Well, or know how you respond. Be more
right.
mindful about how you respond, even if you don't know.
One of those places is how you and I interact, like your fear and anxiety about, am I going to be disappointed? Like Figs, you know, like we've talked about, he can be more prone to, you know, let the kids watch TV. He knows that I'm going to be disappointed if I come down for my session and they've been watching TV. Like, so it's kind of in like your fear of disappointing me and me being critical of you.
Right.
You know, that it helps me understand, you know, the bind that you can feel like you're in. And,
Exactly.
You know, and I did.
By the way, they did 1 hour of TV this week.
Wow.
Max.
Well, I gave Kian TV because every time I needed to nap, I gave him. So,
yeah.
but it actually helps me if you do just 1 hour of TV a week, it really helps because I can then give 1 hour of TV a week, you know, with 20 minutes of a show while I sleep in the middle of the day because I've been waking up really early here. So, and I did see you repair with Grace. Yeah. I did hear you, and I think that means something to her, but I guess there's a kind of ache in my heart, like you said, that she is someone that knows that you have moods and that, and I think, you know, there was a period of time when we went, before we moved to Hawaii, it's like, sounds like such a luxurious life, and it really has been. You know, there's been luxury.
We're very fortunate.
We're very fortunate. We went to Portland for a month, you know, a working staycation kind of during the pandemic, and we won't go into it, but our daughter had an acute OCD
pandemic induced OCD,
which is something that will like OCD is part of her, you know, physiology. And
she's 7 or 6 or 7.
She's 6.
She is 99% better. She had a like very sudden, and maybe it was, you know, the moving from San Francisco to Portland was a much bigger deal.
Huge. It makes sense that something happened, but
she's 99% better.
She'd been so stable. And then suddenly we had this thing where she wouldn't touch doorknobs and she would hold spit in her mouth.
She wouldn't. She thought the water inside her body was even dirty. And,
she would have phobias about spiders and poisons and germs.
She'd get glitter on her and she'd be freaking out that you know, you can't wash the glitter off.
Yeah. That whole feeling was in the ethos in the first part of the pandemic.
And listen, I was a chronic hand sanitizer, sanitizing the kids' hands when they touched every railing. I'm following after them when we were out.
Washing the groceries.
Yeah. Look, you know.
But we went really big, like a lot of us did. But we actually did family therapy between Figs and I and Grace and Kian to kind of help heal the narrative that Mommy and Daddy were really scared at the beginning of this, and that it makes sense it scared you guys. Anyway, so the whole point, kind of bringing it back, it's an important topic for us. We'll probably revisit what happened with Grace, and we do. There are elements.
It's really terrifying.
It's 98% like symptoms are gone for her, but there is a piece inside where her anxiety can manifest in specific ways. And, you know, I would say, I'll diagnose, I would say that I'm someone who has experienced obsessive and compulsive parts. So that's something, and it is a genetically passed piece. So that's something that I have that I believe that Grace was influenced by. And I think Figs has some obsessive pieces. I wouldn't say it is in the same exact way where I can be kind of more on the counting, you know, weirdness, but actually healing Grace has helped me heal some of my OCD.
To learn some of the cognitive behavioral pieces has been really helpful.
What did you do in a nutshell?
Well, one of the most amazing things is not reassuring people, helping them find that voice inside themselves. Like if someone says, "Is this clean?" is just asking them, do you have a voice inside yourself that knows it's clean?
Exactly.
Which is, again, it's not, you know, at first we were like, I would literally she's like, "Is this clean?" And I'd be licking it.
Yeah,
like I'm like, look how clean
you know,
it is.
Your kid is like, is it
But
fake?
that's actually...
Did someone sneeze on me? And all you say is like, of course they didn't. No, honey, giving them hugs. But what happens for the OCD person?
Denial.
Yeah, it's like, and they actually feel like they can't trust you.
Right.
They think you're lying.
You're
to
denying. Like again, if you think about the OCD person as a separate person inside them, and then you keep telling them that you're invalid. Like they just learn, I better just put this on the ground now because clearly you're not going to actually. Yeah. And so like validating the OCD one, the one that's scared, and then seeing, hey, is there anyone else in there?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, we worked with a great specialist.
Yeah, it was really helpful.
And we did workbooks. We did books about worry, and I actually feel like...
And she loves the workbooks.
Yeah, and I feel like...
Actually, we should read those again.
Exactly. I feel like Grace came in to our time in Hawaii. I feel like she came into her current school experience in a stronger place. I mean, she has an awareness of mental illness and mental health, and like, you know, Figs and I were really scared for a time. But going back to the point, which is that when this was happening, Figs and I both had our worlds turned upside down because I'm like, shit, I have all these things, not just since the pandemic. I've been doing some weird shit. Don't touch money, Grace. Wash your hands. You know, like it's part of my OCD to have some ways that I leaned in, and it wasn't too extreme, but it was enough your kids notice. And so I just felt like shit. I'm like, oh my God, I have created this in her. And plus that genetic component, I'm like, I didn't realize this was my thing, and now I realize. And it's like, so I had this big, like, vulnerable, like, crack in my heart. You felt really bad about being so extreme about the hand sanitizer and the COVID. Grocery washing.
Right. And talking about it open, like, you know, the way, like, I didn't realize how Grace took in everything, right? Because she said nothing, she seemed totally unaffected until she was affected.
Exactly.
Like, there was
Grace,
nothing.
Grace was like, seemed oblivious to, like, like she's a visionary child, and her feet aren't always on the ground. So she just was like, no recognition, but like you said, when it dropped,
then it was like all of it.
But another part of this is you started to really analyze your behavior with her, and because when COVID first started, we were so stressed, and all of us were, and Fig said, I think my frustration has been a part of you took this on.
It's scary to think that the way I can be frustrated with her, has made her nervous system more prone to be anxious.
Before you really knew the level of OCD that she was suffering with, you kind of got impatient with her.
Well, yeah, like I was saying, there's been, I would have unrealistic expectations, not grounded in where she is developmentally, probably for a long time, right?
This was before the OCD, just to be clear, Tom. It wasn't like, once it started, then Figs was really frustrated with her. It was like, we were both looking at who we had been as parents and some of our
just is there a way that the way that I've interacted with Grace made her limbic system more scared, right? Like alert or something, which is hard to look at.
How have your repairs been with Grace? How have they worked?
I mean, I think the repairs have been, again, pretty good in terms of, look, I'm able to acknowledge and admit, look, I'm really sorry I talked to you that way. I wasn't able to be there for you in the way you need. It makes sense. Your feelings are really hurt. Like, you can tell me about it. I'm really sorry. I'm here now. I love you. And
she just loves Figs. I mean, she's not like, and she loves me. Like, just, we both had to work on repairing with her. Like, and that's part of what we did in a facilitated way, which I think was really strong for us and our family. I think that, anyway, maybe if you want to stay with that, I didn't want to cut you off, but I think it's brave to say, like you're saying right now, and like I can feel inside of me, oh my God. And, were ways that I was neurotic. How did that inform Grace's OCD just like in ways that I was frustrated. How did that inform Grace's OCD? So it's a really vulnerable place.
Yeah.
And you were just saying it's kind of hard to talk about it because...
Yeah, well, obviously I feel terrible to think that some of my reactivity has impacted Grace, which of course it does. We know it does. Like, that's the way it works, right? That as parents, we impact in good ways and bad ways our children, right? And it's still really, really hard. But in terms of repairing, just to be like, again, you know, the one silver lining is on the back end. I feel, you know, I'm pretty good at seeing my shadow and my negative parts and acknowledging them fully and taking responsibility for it. I wish that meant it won't happen again, but I'm pretty good at repairing and really being there.
Take it in?
I think so. I think she really takes it in, you know.
I think she does too, and I think she's very forgiving. I think what Figs and I just want to, you know, bringing it back to the cycle that happens between he and I. You know, I think we're both kind of in, like, we're both yawning. We have, like, some, I think it's...
No, it's really hard. It's terrible. It's terrible to
you know?
talk about and think about the way it negatively impact our children. And by the way, I just want to at least name it. Like, look, I feel bad talking about Grace's OCD, and it is a factor in, you know, this thing that's a trigger. Like, look, she gets something in her head. Like, so at least now it may not be about, like, is this safe? Is this safe? But if she's like, I want to go to my friend's house.
Yeah, it's this idea.
It's pretty like it's you know it's going to be very hard to get her off that track.
Right, and that's
and that's why I can feel worn down.
It does, and I'm with you there. There's no way that I'm not like, Jesus fucking Christ, stop it.
We have a couple of strong-willed daughters and deal with them a lot with makes deals. Like, okay, today you go to your friend's house.
Right.
But tomorrow is a family day.
Yeah. Well, see, this is interesting you say that. Part of what part of why I have a big place where Grace and I have struggled with each other, and this is why I was saying, like, I haven't always had a realistic sense of what I should expect of her, is I make deals with her that it wasn't fair to expect her to carry through. Like, you know, that she's just, you know, that 6 is getting a little better, but if she agrees to something on the front end, like, because she wants what she wants, like, she's not going to necessarily, like, want to follow through on the back end, you know?
And I think there's a piece here that both of us are working and persevering on, which is following through with boundaries that we set. And, you know, that's been a work in progress for me too. I like this idea, but, you know, I think the key word of what you just said, and I think is really important, is looking at expectations.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I can feel very triggered because even it happened the other day with something with reading and, like, Grace's learning is, he's like, why doesn't she know this or what?
Me?
And, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I think for me, especially in this last year of homeschooling, and now she's finally in person school, is like, hun, we are supposed to teach her from the ground up. Mm-hmm. And so I think I can be like, your expectation, I think sometimes can be here, and I can be more like, I feel like I really understand Grace. Mm-hmm. And I think that's strong. I think that's good.
Right.
And I think you really understand Grace too. Like, let's just be clear. Figs reads to the kids nonstop. Grace cuddles. Grace will not go to sleep without Figs. She cuddles his back all night. She's like, she's head over heels for this person. And it's not because he just reads to her and lets her touch her back. You know, they laugh together. They wrestle. You're like, you're a fun dad. Mm. You're a good dad. You're an engaged dad a lot of the time. Right? Yeah. And I think just the expectation. So sometimes it's like, I don't know. I don't want to be talking about your experience, but I want to say what happens inside for me is around expectations for grace, I almost feel like there's this like intergenerational thing, this expectation of a child knowing something, or as though she's not doing it right. And it's like, I guess I feel like, shit, we gotta teach her that, or we gotta set her expectations. Like I haven't done the front end work of saying, okay, Ellie's house today and family day tomorrow. Like, I haven't been organized. Like,
kind of. So then she feels blindsided.
She feels blindsided. She just pushes. And kids do this. They see the weakness between their parents. Oh, we don't know what's going on, and mom's going to be working. Dad will be kind of vulnerable because Keen will want to do this. Oh, that means I can go. She's smart. She sees all this stuff, and then she just presses on it. And we're usually stressed out and tired by the time we pick her up.
Exactly. So, yeah, look,
I don't know what to say. I just think that the key thing is when we realize a parenting struggle is just reflection, just reflecting about it. So I love that we're talking about it. But there was this period of time after we did, or during Portland, where I just felt like you were so soft with her.
Yeah. Well, look, it's good to keep revisit and reset. And I would like, I want to really work on being softer with her and not being frustrated with her. And I think a big part of that is, like I said, you and I doing work on the front end.
Yeah.
Figs, I really think that'll help your reactions if you know what the plan is.
Right.
Exactly.
It sounds so simple now, but right. Why haven't we done this?
Yeah. And look, and it was late to bring it up, like in the session, it's okay. You just have very strong opinions about stuff, right? Like, and I'm going to use this as a silly example, like if I'm saying, like, so there's a doctor and then you'll like or she, or they, right? Like, you'll correct things like a lot, right? And yes, you're right, he or she or they. And with parenting, like I can get stuck in the... Look, there are probably ways in which... Look, I grew up with you should eat everything on your plate and you can't be... Like, I don't want this, so we won't make... Like, Teale's philosophy is we won't make... They don't have to eat their food on their plate. And if they want something else, we give them something else. Right?
Not necessarily.
Well, I might be exaggerating.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's not black and white. It's not black and white.
It's not black and white, right? But I end up feeling like my natural thing is like, I grew up, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm like, look, you gotta eat the food. Like, you gotta eat the food that you're given.
I get that. I was raised by a dad who's from the Depression, and he made us eat it, and I wanted to do the same with my kids, but it was not helpful. Right.
No, I get it, but look, I understand, but I just feel corrected a lot, right? And I've seen you'll correct other people, like,
Yeah, well, I think this is part of a strength of mine.
It's a strength, exactly.
And I hear that it happens, and I think the biggest thing, especially, talking about front end preparation, something like food and how we interact with our kids around food is something that I don't know how to do it. It was done a very different way for me too. Right. And what have I done? I've researched. Right? Like, I have an actual parenting style, and I have listened to audiobooks and I've read articles. I'm informed. Yeah. And part of that has not just been, I can send those articles to you. You've never really read those, but you and I have talked, and you said, I get it, and I'm on board.
Yeah.
And then I see is over time, I see slipping, and then I see this kind of authoritarian versus authoritative type of parenting happen. And then I really get my feathers ruffled, and then I correct.
Yeah, no, it creates a cycle between us. And I'm not saying that the way so there are two different things. Look, I think it's better that our kids grew up with a different relationship to food that I had. Like, one of my memories of food as a kid is, it's probably the same kind of as the Depression era stuff, like, small farmer, like inner city, like where my parents are from. Like I would be told as a kid, you see that saucepan of potatoes? When you're a man, you'll be able to eat all of those potatoes. Like, so, eating everything and eating a lot was really a sign of like, you're good. So I don't, I don't think my relationship to food is something I want my kids to take. And even though I think it's a good idea, I think sometimes I get in the cycle because I feel hurt when I feel corrected or in front of the kids by you, or it's more about, it's a relational piece between you and I versus a philosophical piece.
Well, that makes sense.
And that makes a lot of sense, Figs. That's vulnerable. I appreciate that vulnerability. I mean, stereotypically, it's not always the case. The moms, they carry the child, they breastfeed the child. They have a heck of a lot more motivation to be attuned with all of this kind of stuff and learn about it. Then they're the expert.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. And by the way, absolutely, Teale is, again, to your point, you've listened to more, you've read more, you are the expert.
Well, I'm also a big sister. Like I had 3 little brothers growing up.
You have so much more experience.
I came into rearing children just being like, I've done this. I've done this a bunch of times. I had brothers that are 10 and 11 years younger than me. So I was a primary child care person for each of, for one of them in particular. But anyway, getting back to the reality is I think you have and had a natural way with our children and with children in general. It's one of the things I fell in love with you about. Animals and children. This man is wonderful. And what I hear right now that makes sense, and that's something that I can be, I think the thing is that I can feel out of power, disempowered around enacting change, and then I just get really critical. But what you're helping me understand right now, and you can let me know if I'm not getting it right, is just the feeling criticized or feeling corrected.
Yeah.
She, they, or kind of like micromanaged in front of our kids,
right,
is really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it just hurt. But listen, look, the main thing, I just feel really bad. Like, I feel my inadequacies as a human being and them affecting our kids. It's just like the worst feeling.
Figs, you have to weigh them against all the positives, the huge.
No, it's true. Absolutely. But I'm glad to look at them and I want to use it. Like you said, like you had said before, like not to get weighed down by the feeling bad about yourself, but by taking in the, like what's the feedback that it's worth taking in to change, right? And I'm not going to get weighed down, but I want to just like, I feel like I've been talking about this on a very surface level because part of me is really scared of really disclosing and being in touch with the way I'm a bad parent. And again, I'm not just a bad parent, I'm a good parent. Like I'm many things. But it's hard to really, really sit in. Like there are ways I fail our children. Now again, I feel good about that. I'm a good repairer. That even if I fuck up, like I'm able to repair. But of course, it's still I want to fuck up as a parent less and less and less. I really want to do it.
I think that's really brave, and I just want to also lead that part of. I know this. For me, it's a grainy feeling in the pit of my stomach where I feel totally scared to think about the ways that I have been harsh with Kian, like maybe over the last 7 months, and all I'm preoccupied with is like, I hope that hasn't really damaged him.
Right.
And so I know what you're talking about, honey, and it makes me feel sick to my stomach thinking about it. And it's amazing. He gave me a little bit of extra opening love, and he was a little de-escalated, Kian, and I found myself moving towards him with love, and now we're in this positive feedback loop, and and now I can see it, and I'm living with regret, which is like, oh. But I think, I love this idea, and I'm not going to go into it's a parenting technique. People use rubber bands for it, in fact. I have one negative interaction with my child, and so I take off all the balloons or the rubber bands, and then balloons are a big theme in our house right now. And so I have to have 7 positive interactions to earn back those damn rubber bands, which it's like, and I really feel like it works with our kids. It's like, I was shit and now I'm brilliant and now I'm brilliant and now you're looking at me and you're snuggled up, and I just want you to know I'm in it with you.
Well,
we can talk about my thing with Kian because I know
it's fine, but I appreciate the way you brought it up today, and that it wasn't, let's talk about how shit Figs is.
Can I just say that don't be so hard on yourselves either about thinking that you've permanently damaged your kids. I mean, I know with young kids and not knowing, it's this feeling of, oh my God. I mean, they're more resilient than you think. I mean, you see them as teenagers and you'll feel like you should have been harder on them. I don't know.
Right, exactly. Yeah, why didn't I lock them in that dungeon more often? Exactly. Yeah.
And I also thought that Teale, maybe there's a way that when you're sort of, quote, want to impart your expertise about parenting to Figs, you could make it more of a humorous thing. Can I be the expert now or something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's great. Sometimes we're kind of process oriented in here, and sometimes it feels good to just, especially around parenting, because it's desperately like we need to work on this today.
Exactly.
I do.
Yeah, I'm much more. I noticed it, and the last thing I'll say, it is. I'm more. When we talk about just our emotional process, I'm not that into what are the solutions, but with the parenting, I'm like, what do we do? I just want to know what to do. The rest of the stuff, I'm like, no, it's about our feelings.
Yeah.
But,
well, I appreciate you acknowledging.
He's doing a lot of reading.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I'm really grateful for all the reading you do. I really am. I know, I can get triggered when you suggest stuff, but I actually am. Thank God you're doing the reading.
Thank you.
Really.
Jesus.
Thanks for saying this was a successful way to bring something up. It actually sends a good
Thank
message to me about how we can do it in the future.
You did really good.
Wow. All right. Well, what was it like watching it again for you, sweetie?
Yeah, it was rich. It was rich. It's amazing. It's just amazing how much more there was that happened than I at first remembered. Like watching it again, I picked up so many other things. The first thing is just, again, I was really struck by how easy it would be if we were in a really bad place with each other, that session would never have happened. Because as soon as you started talking about your list, or like I was talking, you could have already been upset because it seemed like I was avoiding doing any work by trying to talk about what happened last week. We so easily could have had to just debrief a present moment fight, what we call a cycle between us. But luckily, I wasn't, you were pretty good about just even though you were pretty bossy pants, and just not being too upset with me that I seemed like I didn't want to do any work. And then also I wasn't too reactive with you, right? When you were like, I've got my list.
I thought you were great. I'm like, oh my gosh, watching myself back. It's like I didn't want to even give our therapist any time to talk. I think I shut him down several times. Anytime you talked, I'd be like, okay, and let's just wrap that up there. Let me get back to the point.
Yeah.
And so
it worked.
I feel like you guys were quite tolerant of me, but I had an agenda, and I think you're right. But I was skillful in that. It wasn't just
you were skillful.
Crap. I was sharing. I was actually, and this is how I feel. Sometimes we have situations where I look really controlling and critical of you with parenting, but believe me, I'm a 360-degree person. I feel my inadequacies so big. And so I think about it in actually quite a lot of equality. And I think I was able to represent that. So going back to the list, it's often not effective for us pursuers. You can scare the crap out of our partners. It's like, I don't want to have the list, but how do I share about myself and have you actually be engaged and not be upset with me and shut down because of the shame? How are we in this together and having a conversation? And somehow it's like the magical ingredients of the soup were right. And we were able to get into the belly of the beast, which was actually a very traumatic event for us. I didn't know we were going to talk about over the summer.
I had no idea. Even when we started talking about parenting, it never entered my mind that we would end up talking about just the trauma, right, that we all went through, how terrified we all were when, Grace suddenly started. She went from oblivious to anything happening in the world. All she cared about was running and skipping and listening to audiobooks and right, to worried about anything to do with cleanliness.
Yeah.
So I was really blown away by just how valuable it was at that conversation to revisit. Just there's still a lot of trauma and grief that we haven't fully processed about how scary a time that was.
I mean, I wonder why that is. Like, I wonder why this. It's like we haven't even. I think
we're
we've
not
just been
even
like,
out of the pandemic.
Yeah, we're not out of the pandemic.
Like, now it's December, right? So like we're all surviving.
Right.
But by the way, that's one of the main takeaways I'm hoping for the listeners is like one of the things I'm often trying to tell my clients is that some conversations are over and over again conversations, right? Yeah. Like, and I always use the example, right? That it should be obvious to everyone, I love you is an over and over again conversation. Like, for example, when you and your partner first met and you told them, I love you, you didn't then say to them, now you've heard that, right? You got it. I don't need to say that to you again, right? That would be crazy. And stuff like the big moments in your life, whether it's the birth of your children, whether it's your wedding day, whether it's that amazing trip you had, just because you both know the story, that's not the same as purposely, consciously revisiting and entering the experience of that time with each other and reliving it.
Right.
And bad experiences are really important, like quote unquote traumatic experiences are really important to revisit again, right? And without getting too technical, because usually what happens over time is we lose the part of ourselves, access to the part of us that had the experience, whether it was a tremendous joy, whether it was tremendous fear or sadness, we lose access to that part because the part that takes over inside a human being is the story-making part, the part that has now made meaning in a story about what happened. Right. So when we go back in and we tell the story about what happened, there's a doorway back into the actual moment to moment to moment experiencing self in both of us. Yeah. And I think that's what was most powerful about this session. And you could see it actually, I thought, a lot in our sighs. Oh, there was a lot of these like
sighs and yawns,
right?
Kind of trauma release.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so taken with your description of this as like little doors and going from, because I think you and I have revisited the story in little brief things, just sort of saying like, wow, like kind of noticing where Grace is at now, which by the way, she's amazing. Primarily come out of this, although there's probably parts of this that will resurface at times for her. It's part of her physiology. Exactly. But it's something that we know so much more about and something we've explored in our own selves. I think I was kind of dissociated from it. And that's why bringing it up, it felt like, oh my gosh, we're walking into these murky territory. And then it felt really intense.
It was really intense. And the shame, right? We talk about, look, we all have stories, and this is a very normal thing, right? Where something bad happens and some part of us goes, what is it that I did that led to this happening? And then, of course, other people too, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many people would have like talked to me about parenting. Like, you know, usually when there's something wrong, there's something that the parents did wrong. So like, I even, by the way, I'm just accessing this right now. It was hard talking to people when this was happening, when it was really scary, because even the most well-meaning people in our lives that love us would often be giving us, well, there's this great parenting advice I have for you, you know, and it's like, oh my God.
Take this supplement, or hey, it's not that bad. And I'm like,
and it just is shaming, right? It just feels like, you know, that we're being blamed as the parents. And obviously I have a place inside myself, and I know you have, where we can blame ourselves.
And that's what you find out. Right. So it's a real vulnerable dive for both Figs and I. And I think there was a beautiful equality in that. Right. And hopefully we represent that in the...
Yeah, and we were a team with each other in supporting each other where we feel bad.
Yeah.
About ourselves and how we could have, whether, like you were saying, genetically for you, because you have a little OCD tendencies yourself, right. And whether it's like, oh shit, like the way I can be like reactive or big or angry if something goes wrong, and that Grace is kind of scared, like, oh, I did something wrong, oh Jesus, Dad will be mad at me. Like, does that kind of development of that neural pathway inside her, has that led to an increased ability for her to worry, to develop an OCD? Like, look, we both have stories we can get stuck in. I want to be the best I can as a parent. Having these conversations is a great, I think we called it in the session, a great reset. And it's working. Like, I really looking at Grace and just with as much kindness and love as I feel it in my heart and accessing it and making sure she sees that in my eyes. I know you and Keen are still like beating on each other, biting each other. But
but we're having fun while we're doing it.
By the way, if you look, I know this is going on a while. The other thing I wanted to say that I think is huge in the work we do, and it got really deepened in learning how to better meet Grace's OCD, is this notion that stop trying to get rid of your bad feelings. Like when we work with individuals and couples, I always say like we're doing our best to try and help them feel their feelings better, not trying to help them feel better. This is a paradox. If people feel their feelings better, they will actually feel better. And so that's the key thing to work on. You know, we touched on this in the session where we talk about, it turned out the best way, which we went to see a child expert with OCD, even children, the best way to help someone is not to keep reassuring them when they're worried with OCD, but is to see if you can acknowledge that, yes, you are scared. I'm not going to try and get rid of your scared. And then see if you could help them, invite them to find a voice inside themselves that knows, actually, I don't have to be that scared myself.
It was almost immediate fix.
It was amazing what a big difference.
It was so transformative. And because the OCD child or the OCD person, you'll see it in adults too, is if you just say, no, honey, everything's going to be okay.
Right.
They start distrusting you. And then they are totally alone in the world. And then they can't.
By the way, so this is where this extends way past OCD. If someone comes into my office and say, you know, Viggs, my husband is terrible, you know, or my wife is awful, I'm not going to try and argue with them. You know, I don't think you're right. Right? I can go to like acknowledge and be with them and really support the way they feel that way. Doesn't mean I'm saying like, you're right, they are terrible. But I'd like, wow, like make sure they know I'm totally on their side, because otherwise they're going to give even more and more and more and more and more evidence that their partner or spouse really is horrible. And once they feel that I really am on their side, where I really am with them, understanding how they feel, now I might be able to invite them, or they will naturally, intuitively do it themselves, find the other voice inside them, which might be, but sure, they have a couple of good qualities. Right? But it's much better they find that inside themselves. And the best way to do that is to support people, stop trying to change how they feel. Right? It's this weird paradox, right? Stop trying to make people feel better, help them feel their feelings, and they will end up feeling better. So anyway, that was just, I learned that in an even deeper way with trying to help Grace.
Well, thanks for sharing about that for you. I mean, it's always just,
thank you.
It just helps, again, I think the waves of the processing, opening up the little doors. I can feel kind of a seriousness and a settling in it.
Yeah.
But, that's not bad. It's just, it's a reverence, and I'm just so honored that Grace is my daughter, and she's so brilliant and deep and wise, and I'm so glad I get to do the parenting journey with you.
Thanks, Phoebe. Likewise. Yeah, you are such an amazing mom and partner, and you enrich our children's lives and my life every single day in ways where I would enrich the curvature of our couch. If you weren't here, right? But look, thank you again. I have no idea. I really hope it's helpful that we share about our journey, and we're here if you have any questions or thoughts, you want to explore counseling or any stuff for how to have a better relationship or how to feel your own feelings better.
Let us know how we can help. Thanks for being here with us and witnessing our sticky, icky, juicy, wonderful, weird journey.
Exactly. And hey, 2 weeks, next episode.
Can't wait.
Right. Cheers.
That's a good one. Bye.
This was Come Here to Me. Relationship experts walk the talk.
Visit comeheretomepodcast.com for episode transcripts, social media links, and to subscribe to the mailing list.
If you or someone you love are struggling in your relationship, or just want to work on making things that little bit better, visit us at empathy.com. That's empathy with an I on the end, not a Y on the end. We've got quizzes, courses, videos, articles, and free consultations for couples counseling or for relationship coaching.